Welcome back to another episode of Wandering Aloud in my gallery. In the first couple, I made some connections to the fantastic Jethro Tull song Wandering Aloud. Of course, there's a double hit in this series of Jethro Tull references, the second to an equally fantastic song, Minstrel in the Gallery. I'm not a minstrel. I suppose speaking is not that far away from the song, but today I'm just going to connect to the word gallery. I got thinking about this. Every now and then I have these little reveries where I start measuring out the time, thinking about what happened when, and doing little comparisons. I find it interesting, and I think maybe quite valuable, because if we don't reflect on where our time's going and what's happening, it sneaks up on you, or rather it recedes quickly into history, and before you know it, 20 years have gone by and you can't quite account for them. And in this case, the gallery's been around for 8 years, just about 8 years as a functioning gallery, 8 years in June. And wow, I got thinking about 8 years, and that was how long I'd spent in Peru. And if you've followed my vlog, you'll have heard more than enough tales from deepest, darkest Peru. But it was a pivotal phase in my life. So much happened. It changed me. I remember the first time I went home to South Africa after taking up the job in Peru, and that was after 3 years. It was I got flights at the end of contract, so I decided I'm not going to waste what precious little savings I generated. That's terrible to say that, wasted on visiting the family. No, that's not the right word. I'm not going to spend it when there's so many new places to go and things to see in South America. So, whichever way you slice it, I didn't go home for 3 years. And I remember my mother, a little while into the visit, saying said, "Look, Neil, I've got to say this, but you are a completely different person." And it was true in many obvious ways, in many not so obvious ways that only a mother would pick up on. But the fact was, 3 years in South America had completely changed me. And 8 years in Peru, wow, that really was a dramatic shift in so many ways, good and bad. But of course, it's 8 years here in Paripuera, this little village in my corner of the rural northeast of Brazil. And that hasn't changed me in the kind of necessarily bold, blunt, brutal, let's stay with the bees, ways that my time in Peru did. It's been a gentler change, but for all that, equally powerful. And so this gallery spans that time. And it's interesting reflecting on that. I don't know about you. If you're in the habit of sometimes daydreaming and thinking about how long you've been somewhere and what's happened, and who you were at the beginning and who you are now, and how much that person is profoundly different. I mean, we're different. Certainly 8 years is long enough to see a difference, a physical difference. 8 years is long enough to have learnt, mastered, become, in terms of what you're doing, a completely different person. Whether it's a job where, I think in terms of Peru, I started out as a school teacher, and I was essentially a newly qualified teacher. I'd been teaching for a few years. I'd worked at a number of different schools, but 8 years was a period when I really got my act together in terms of the job I was doing. For 5 years, then I left it for a year, opened a bar, watched the business collapse, went back to teaching. I mean, so much happened. And when I look and mark out the time in this gallery, so much has happened here. I chose as a backdrop today my large David study. I look at my work and I think about the progress that is being made over the time I've been living here. And I can see that it's quite dramatic. And yet on a day-to-day basis, time passes very slowly. I'm in a village. I'm a person of habit. And progress is slow. These large pieces take a long time to make, and weeks, even months go by, and you don't seem to be getting anywhere. And then you have got somewhere. And I've been thinking about that a lot because this has been a week when I changed the position of the large head study, looked at it from a slightly different angle. And that's what reflection is. And it's necessary. I mean, you can't just reflect. You have to be doing stuff, kind of gathering material, substance to reflect upon. But equally, you can't just be existing, doing stuff, and not reflecting on what you're doing. Because, as I said before, that is a path to finding yourself in a place where you've become a stranger to yourself. You suddenly wake up and look back and say, how the hell did I get here? And who am I? What the dickens happened? And you can't quite make sense of it all. So I think it's important to take time out to take stock of who you are, where you are, how you got here, and where you're going. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on your own reflections. And be daring. Leave a comment. Start a conversation. Until next week, I look forward to hearing from you, reading those comments, and I trust you're keeping well, and wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Till next week. Ciao from my gallery in Brazil.